Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to a special edition of the Salt and Light Hour. I'm Deacon Pedro. Today we will be going into the Salt and Light closet and pulling out some of our favorite conversations from the fall of 2024. First off, we're joined by author Paul Jarzembowski, who helps us find hope for the holidays. We spoke with Paul during Advent, but of course the holidays also include Easter, so this is relevant all year long. After that, we reconnect with singer-songwriter Aly Aleigha, who has new music. In our second half hour, we remember the great Catholic thinker and author Father Henri Nouwen with his good friend, author Carolyn Whitney-Brown. Make sure you stay tuned to hear the story about Henri Nouwen and the trapeze artists. And at the end of the program, we reconnect with singer-songwriter Ricky Vazquez and listen to music from his new album, All Is Not Lost. We begin now with Hope for the Holidays. It's no secret that not everyone is filled with joy and faith during the holidays. In fact, Christmas particularly is a time of anxiety, stress, and for many, also loneliness and hopelessness. Author Paul Jarzembowski recognizes this in his new book, Hope for the Holidays, and takes us on a spiritual journey by the hand of none other than Ebenezer Scrooge of Charles Dickens' The Christmas Carol, and helps us find light at the darkest time of the year. And to tell us more, I'm now joined by Paul Jarzembowski. Paul, welcome to the Salt and Light Hour. It's good to see you.
Oh, it's so good to see you as well.
I don't get to see you as the author, Paul Jarzembowski. We're always wearing World Youth Day t-shirts and not getting enough sleep.
It's true. That's our normal operation. That's the work we do. But no, this is the other side of my ministerial life.
It is, and it's good that you have that side, so we can talk about it. So you're a pastoral minister. You've been working for the U.S. You work for the U.S. bishops. You're like an expert in World Youth Day. Why write this book?
You know, this is my second book, too. So the first one
was not about World Youth Day.
Not about World Youth Day. Both books were actually inspired by the idea of moments of return. One thing in my work with young people, one thing I notice is that while young people, young adults specifically, aren't necessarily returning after they get married or have kids, they do still come back for major things. Ash Wednesday, Easter, Christmas. And so because of that, I've noticed some of those trends. I wanted to write about it. I wanted to write both to the ministry leaders who might respond to them in those moments of return to church, but also to the people who are making a moment of return. So I really felt my heart goes out to that particular element of evangelization that I wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive in. And so my first book was written to ministers, and my second book is written to those who are potentially making that moment of return.
But that makes sense, actually, because in fact the parts of the book that I enjoyed the most were those parts that were really speaking to me as a minister. And I'm very aware that there are people that are constantly returning or popping in and then you don't see them again. And of course, definitely during the holidays. Why did you choose Ebenezer Scrooge? I mean, obviously there's a personal a connection there, but why him? Why is he a good guide for here?
Well, first of all, Scrooge gets a bad rap. I mean, we know him. It's funny. We use this name to refer to his pre-conversion self. But yet, you think about it, in literature, he's the most famous convert. It'd be like as if we talked about St. Paul and St. Augustine by just talking about all the bad stuff that they did.
That's a great analogy,
But he's a fictional character, so his feelings aren't hurt too bad.
He also has a good last name, a cool last name. It's like to be Scrooge.
Yeah.
Don't be such a Scrooge. We're not going to say don't be such a Saul.
Although my childhood self is thinking about the fact that he eventually, after his conversion, he had a big money bin in Duckburg and had Huey, Louie, and Dewey as his nephews that he took care of for the rest of his life. What a great guy!
Oh, so is that it? That he's a good guy because he has that conversion, and we need to be with him before his conversion in order to understand what the return is like?
There is that.
Okay.
There is definitely that. But to be honest with you, I love the story. It's always the one that at the holidays I come back to. I have like almost every version ever made on movie in my DVD collection. It's just one of my favorites. So it came naturally to me when I was thinking about the idea of returning, the idea of conversion around the holidays. I gravitated naturally to our most popular image. Plus, I also think if I was going to speak to people who may be making that moment of return, instead of giving a biblical image that they may not be familiar with, I decided to give them an image that I would say most people are familiar with, whether they're religious or not.
Yeah, absolutely. You can never go wrong with popular culture.
Even one from the 1840s.
Yeah, no, but he's still a good guide for this particular journey. You do obviously talk also about the fact that the holidays are a time of stress and anxiety. You offer suggestions, maybe for the people who are thinking, Thanksgiving's coming up, then Advent, before you know it, already Christmas decorations are up and there's traveling home and all that. Maybe one tip that you can suggest to people that maybe are starting to feel that right now?
Yeah. I think the first tip that I think we could use a lot more of these days is just silence. It's really the first tip of the book, actually, is really just shut it down for a moment. Even if you give yourself 5 minutes a day. And that to me would be the awesomest Advent calendar. Just take 5 minutes a day for silence. And in that silence, you can pray, you can reflect, or you can just turn out the noise. I find that sometimes what I do So I do put the Christmas tree up a little early, usually around the end of November, American Thanksgiving.
Okay.
I know.
True confession. It's confession.
True confessions here. But what it does for me throughout Advent is I'll sometimes just sit there in my living room and I take those 5 minutes of silence and I'll just stare at in a dark room the lights, the glow of the Christmas tree lights, and just allow that to just. Maybe I'll reflect on an ornament because maybe it's something that my mom made for me as a kid or my grandmother gave me, and I'll have a reflection on my grandparents. Or maybe it's an ornament that I actually have an ornament from World Youth Day in Panama, because they were selling a lot of great swag, including ornaments.
Right.
And so I'll look at that ornament and I'll think about my time with you, and so I'll think back to those moments. And so that to me. But spending those moments in silence and whatever visual cue one needs in those moments, whether it's a Christmas tree, an Advent wreath, or just perhaps just ducking into a church for 5 minutes, whatever we can do for ourselves, but giving ourselves that, making that an Advent calendar of sorts that you could say 5 minutes. That's all. That's what I'm going to do it.
I love that.
If it extends to more, that's fine, but do fine.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I have to confess, I do the same thing. I love, especially at dark, everybody else is asleep. I'll sneak into the living room and I'll spend some time with the tree. Except I won't do it in November, but I might. But I might leave the tree up until the end of January. Well, maybe not quite the end of January, but because my wife won't let me. But I'd like to. We need more silence in our lives, and it's interesting to think because you're talking about finding hope. So the idea that just with silence is enough to at least steer us and point us in the right direction,
Right, and that's why it's the other reason why the Christmas Carol does seem to be a good thing, because what happens in that story is that it's not until there's the silence of when Scrooge has ended his day at the counting house and he's in silence that the spirits start to appear to him, and he starts to reflect on his past. he starts to look around a little bit more deeply at his present, like, oh, I should probably be a little bit more self-aware. And then he starts to contemplate what his future will be. And again, a lot of that emerges from the silence, and that's what we can do in it. We can think of our past, our present, and our future. Every day of Advent, we could theoretically have our own encounter with the spirits, and have a reflection on our past, our present, and our future, and then all that's entailed with that.
Yeah, and I think for some people that can be scary, and I don't think that we're definitely not encouraging people, to be scared about it, because it can be a beautiful moment of reflection. This is really good. Thank you for that suggestion. I think it's like, okay, I'm done. I don't need to. I mean, we want people to get the book and read the book, because there's lots of other suggestions there, especially for ministers. Like, I love the idea that a lot of people, one of the things that stresses me at Christmas time, the Christmas Mass, is all the people that never go to church, and all of a sudden they're there taking up my pew and not knowing the responses and talking, but there's even hope in that, and that we forget.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the fact that when, I look at all the people I don't know and that are annoying me in my pew or in the parking lot as, oh my God, Lord, thank you for bringing new people into my church. Absolutely. All year long, I've been praying, Lord, bring people to my church. I want people to come to church to find a closeness to something sacred to the community. And the Lord delivers on Christmas. So the last thing I need to do is tell the Lord, never mind about that request I've been making for the last 364 days.
Yeah, exactly.
But when it comes to just have a sense of gratitude, and with that gratitude to engage them. And perhaps because of that, because of what we do for them, they might not make that the only time they come to church in a year. If they have a good encounter with me, with you, with those of us who are more frequent churchgoers, they might say, those are some good people here. I'm gonna come again sometime.
Absolutely, yeah, with a good homily and a good music. Absolutely. And you give lots of more suggestions than just that in the book. So thank you for that. Thank you for encouraging us to, think about Advent this early, definitely for me, and Christmas, and to be aware that we're always returning, and that's not a bad journey to be on all the time. So thank you for that, Paul.
Sure.
Paul Jarzembowski is Associate Director of the Office of Laity, Marriage, Family Life, and Youth for the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. His latest book is Hope for the Holidays, published by Paulist Press. Here now is Aly Aleigha with her single, written with Father Mike Schmitz, Face to Face.
Can't be ready unless you get ready. Tell me, what does it take? Obstacles come against me, but you never forget me. You're always holding my name. And when I finally see you as you are, and then see me as I am,
That was Aly Aleigha with her single, Face to Face. We first met Aly Aleigha in October 2018. She had just released her album, The Labyrinth, as a follow-up to her 2015 album, Jealous Love. Aly is a graduate of Franciscan University and worked for Father Mike Schmitz for 2 years in Duluth, Minnesota. In 2017, after walking the Camino, Aly started doing music full-time, and in 2019, independently. Since then, when she's not leading worship or doing speaking engagements or touring, she is creating music and living fully alive, marveling at the powerful gift of music. And it is so good to welcome Aly Aleigha to our Christmas special. You've been sitting here, listening to the program. I'm curious, Aly, and maybe it's because I'm thinking when it's, Wisconsin, and it's like, I always think of Wisconsin, I think it's winter all the time. Of course it isn't. But what was Christmas like growing up for you?
Some of my favorite memories are the amount of snow that we've gotten sometimes. I don't know if it is a real memory or if it's just because I was so small, I imagined
right.
Snow being so much deeper. But I remember looking out the window and seeing just this giant pile of snow and being like, oh, I want to go jump in that. And as I got older, we have horses, and there were times when before school I'd have to wake up early. I'd get out of bed and I'd put on the snowsuit, and I couldn't go down outside the normal way that I would get out to go feed the horses, because that was through the basement, but the snow was up to the door top, crazy amount. And that was because it was the wind blew all the snow right there in this little hill in the basement. But so we would have to go upstairs and jump off of the porch and land in the snow and trudge through the snow to go feed the horses.
That sounds like fun.
It was an adventure.
That sounds like fun. So this idea, earlier when we spoke at the beginning of the show, you were telling us about solstice. And see, I grew up in Latin America, in Panama. And so, we're lucky. Most of the year, the days are, 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness. And when I moved to Canada is when a lot of these ideas of darkness and light and Advent really started making more sense. But for you grew up with that. It's very, very prominent, I guess, that December 21st solstice is the shortest day of the year. Sometimes you have 6 hours of light or 8 hours at the most of light. What was that look like growing up for you? I guess it was normal, right?
Yeah, I guess it was normal, but it definitely, I think I think I'm not alone in this, that everyone even who grew up in this kind of climate and the darkness of winter, it can get long and hard,
Yeah.
Oh, I just want some sunshine. But that's, going back to solstice, that's the beauty of resonating with that reality of light and darkness, and how Jesus comes to save us from that darkness, but also he can baptize the darkness in a way that, Advent, I feel is this beautiful time to kind of enter into that darkness in order to prepare for him to come and save us, and I don't mean darkness in the sense of evil, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But just the candlelight, the Advent wreath, there's beauty in that that waiting period for him to come and bring us into the fullness of light.
Yeah, that's a beautiful concept that I hadn't really thought about in terms of baptizing the darkness. That is at first getting, taking more and more, because it's getting darker and darker. But then, and I'm very aware, even though come February, it's I'm done. But already in February, we have so much more light than we had in December. And so it literally is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so tell us about Face to Face. So you collaborated with your good friend Mike Schmitz on this Advent series. So he was doing an Advent series for Ascension Press and needed a song. That's
right. Yeah. So at camp this year, so every year I sing for a youth camp that Father Mike puts on in the Diocese of Duluth. And at camp this year, I was just walking down to my cabin, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I'm doing this Advent series with Ascension, and we'd love a song to go along with it. Would you take a crack at it? And I said, yeah, of course. So he sent me some of the reflections that he was planning on doing in this Advent series. And I reflected on that, and I was also in the process of getting married, actually. So it was a very busy season of life, and so my now husband said at the time, because I was so busy, and I was like, I don't know, like when to like sit down and actually like reflect on this enough to let the inspiration flow for the song. My fiance at the time said, why don't you think about it in light of like waiting for our wedding? Like Advent is this time to wait for this beautiful, time for the Lord to come. So that was a cool reflection that I sat with, as well as all of the reflections that Father Mike gave. And then eventually the song just kind of came, really, it just like all flowed at once, which was really beautiful. Like, I think, like, again, going back to Advent, this time of waiting and preparation, as I was writing this song, it was the preparation that took the longest. And like when I actually like sat down to write it, it just flowed really naturally.
Right.
So I see a parallel with, Advent and Christmas there.
Okay, wow, totally. Congratulations on the marriage. I didn't know.
Thank you.
How fun, and I'm so glad I asked, because there were some of the lyrics here that I was like, cheek to cheek under the brightest star, that now has a whole other meaning. But I wanted to ask you about fear to fiat, because again, we talk about fiat a lot, and we also talk about fear a lot, but of course those two can be related, as we let go of our fears when we say yes to God.
Yeah. So these lines that you're picking out, I think they're so beautiful. Father Mike actually, they're very present in his reflections for this series. So the fear to fiat line, is just talking about like stepping out from behind the things that hold us back from coming face to face with the Lord, right? So the whole series is, what if Christmas Day you woke up and you saw the Lord face to face? Because at the end of our lives, we're all going to see him face to face, and we're going to just be ourselves before him. And how do we prepare for that? How do we get ready for that? So it's kind of a new take on Advent in a way, where you just like, what if on Christmas morning I was standing before the Lord face to face? What would I need to do to get ready in my heart, just be who I am before him, and let him love me and see me fully. So the cheek to cheek under the brightest star, it goes along with our own relationship with the Lord, but also like Christmas, that image of Our Lady and Joseph holding baby Jesus cheek to cheek under the brightest star that drew all of the wise men and the shepherds to honor him. I think those are just really beautiful moments to reflect on, as well as how do I get ready to stand before the Lord face to face? They
are, absolutely. And I love what I love about the seasons of the church. The liturgical season is not like we can only do that during Advent. We're supposed to be doing that all the time. I mean, we meet the Lord at the Eucharist, in the Eucharist, anytime in the Eucharist. Absolutely. But the church gives us the gift of Advent to remind us that this is what we should be doing all the time. Exactly. Yeah. What a beautiful concept of, thinking of Advent that way. Tell us the story about meeting the violin player, Luciano Pavan, that ended up being featured in your arrangement of Carol of the Bells.
Yeah, so I had this arrangement of Carol of the Bells that I actually performed with some friends at a Christmas concert years ago. And it's always been on my radar to record. And I was on a family vacation with my parents, and we were in Mexico, and we went to this restaurant, and there was this violinist playing at this restaurant, and he was incredible. Just the pure talent, so good. So I had to go up to him after I was done eating and say, "Oh my goodness, you're so good. Tell me about yourself."
That's funny.
Yeah, and so we chatted a little bit, and I asked him, like, would you be willing to collaborate in the future on something? And he was up for it. So that was really exciting. And I was like, okay, this is great. Carol of the Bells would be so cool to have him throw some violin on there. So I recorded and sent him what we had, and he sent back just this incredible epic strings part for this beautiful hymn. So yeah, I'm really excited about it.
It is, and I love that arrange. I mean, of course, I heard it and I was like, "This is not Carol of the Bells." I couldn't quite. I mean, of course, after hearing it for a bit, I could hear it. But you're right. The violin, and maybe haunting is not the right word to use,
Mhm.
but yeah, and of course, we're going to end the program with Carol of the Bells. So before we go, I'm just going to let people know, because I'm going to get Aly to introduce the song Carol of the Bells, and she can tell us why um she wanted to arrange that specific Christmas song. But before that, thank you for being with us today, Aly. It's been so good to spend a little bit of time, get to know you a little better today, and to celebrate Christmas with you today in a way.
Absolutely. It's my honor. Thank you so much for having me.
So you can learn more about Aly Aleigha at her website, ally-aleigha.com. And Aleigha is spelled Aleigha, Aleigha, but I'm going to put that link on our site, slmedia.org/podcast, so you can find it easily. And then when you go to Aly's website, that's where you can purchase her music and book her for your next event. And so, Aly, do you want to introduce Carol of the Bells?
Absolutely, yes. So yeah, this arrangement of Carol of the Bells, I have always been enamored with, again, the season of Advent, but also like the music of Advent, like ancient hymns like O Come, Emmanuel and Let All Mortal Flesh. They're in this minor key, right? And it's a little bit, like you said, haunting and spooky, but in a beautiful way that, again, like entering into like the theme of the darkness, waiting for the light to come in. And so this rendition of Carol of the Bells kind of leans into that same vibe, right? Of like, it's a little bit haunting. And then, yeah, it just kind of explodes and erupts in this like joyous, but also still like musical tension. I just think it's really cool. And especially what Luciano added to the piece is really incredible. So I'm so excited to share it with everyone. I hope you all enjoy it. So here's Carol of the Bells featuring Luciano Pavan.
We're listening to Aly Aleigha's arrangement of Carol of the Bells featuring Argentinian violinist Luciano Pavan. This is a special best of edition of the Salt and Light Hour. I'm Deacon Pedro. Check out our website at slmedia.org/podcast and get our Salt and Light Plus app at your favorite app store. Welcome to the Salt and Light Hour Part 2. I'm Deacon Pedro. Henri Nouwen is probably one of the most influential spiritual writers of our time. You might be familiar with some of his 39 books: The Wounded Healer, In the Name of Jesus, Life of the Beloved, The Way of the Heart, Return of the Prodigal Son, and Adam, God's Beloved. After 20 years of teaching, Henri Nouwen moved into the L'Arche Daybreak community in Richmond Hill, Ontario, north of Toronto, where he lived and worked with adults with intellectual disabilities. That's where Carolyn Whitney-Brown met him while she was living there with her family. Henri Nouwen died in 1996, but he left one last manuscript, which Carolyn has taken and finished under the title Flying, Falling, Catching, An Unlikely Story of Finding Freedom. It tells the exhilarating true story of Henri's friendship with the Flying Rodleys Trapeze Troupe. And to tell us more, I am now joined by Carolyn Whitney-Brown. Carolyn, welcome to the Salt and Light Hour. It's so good to meet you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So I have to tell you that I did my pastoral placement at Daybreak, and I always imagined what it would be like to have been there at the time when Henri Nouwen was alive, but you were there at the time when Henri Nouwen was alive. So what was that like? What was he like?
He was a delight to know. There have been a lot of writing, which is true, about his anxieties,
Mm-hmm.
his personal anguish.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things this book really brought back to me was how much fun Henry was, how much he loved to dance at parties. He loved people. He had just a sweet, sweet energy about him.
Mm.
And I was thinking about Advent, when we're told to be awake. And I've been thinking this week, what do I want to say about Henry? And I realized something I've never actually put words around before, is that I think Henry was one of the most awake people I've ever known.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, his ability to pay attention to other people's realities,
Okay.
to be awake to not just his own suffering, but other people's suffering, other people's joys, his whole life trajectory. And I can say more about that leads to the Flying Rodleys.
Do you mean that he was very good at being present, listening, watching? Like, is that what you mean by being awake?
Yeah, that's part of it. And then taking what he hears and really thinking about what that means in a bigger context, this person's context.
Do you remember when you first met him? Did you know about him when you first met him?
Yeah, I had been reading his books for years. I started reading his books when I was a teenager.
Oh, wow.
So
what was it like when you first met him?
It's pretty comical. We'd written him. My husband Jeff and I were finishing PhDs in the States, and we had this sort of recovering academic, overdeveloped intellect, needing to develop our hearts, really wanting our spirits to come alive in a new way, wanting to follow Jesus much more deeply in community. So we had that in common, and we wrote to Henry, and he said, come visit. And he took us out for pizza for lunch, and he was an absolutely terrible driver. It was kind of terrifying because he wanted to make eye contact while he was driving, and I watched the road. And we went to the lunch, and they knew him at the Pizza Barrel there, and he was kind of following the waitress around with his empty glass, and she was saying, "Henry, sit down, I'll bring it to you." And he took his glasses off, and he wrapped his hands around his face, and he said, I think I get more handicapped all the time. And then he put his glasses back on and said, "Now tell me about you." And he remembered everything from our letters,
oh my gosh,
and all of our searching and our journey. And he absolutely focused. And he said to us, "You're not kids trying to find yourselves. I think your lives are very directed." And that meant the world to us, because we had gone through a whole kind of journey to England, to Africa, living with different kinds of communities, and we're really listening to where Jesus called us. So his focus and affirmation was huge. So that was the first day we met Henry.
That's amazing. So that he was able to tune in, to zero in to the essential, I guess, of you and your husband. How did he come to know this flying trapeze troupe?
Well, it happened in 1991. He had finished his book that became The Return of the Prodigal Son. And I kind of think his spirit was open to a whole new kind of imagery. He'd spent a decade really immersed in Rembrandt's painting.
Yeah.
And he went to the circus, a traveling circus in Germany with his father. And it was a fine circus, he said, with animals and clowns and things, but it wouldn't have stayed in his mind, except there was this trapeze troupe, the Flying Rodleys. And he was absolutely mesmerized by their beauty, the elegance of their performance, the trust that was needed. It did something really profound for him, so deep that he didn't really have words for it, but he knew he wanted to go back again. And he went back again the next day, and he actually then took the step and took a deep breath and went and met them. And over the next 5 years, they became real friends. He rented at one point a recreation vehicle and traveled with them. He
Wow.
wanted to write a book about them and about their friendship. He said to other friends that it was going to be his most important book ever, that this
Hmm.
that there was something about the way that they embodied something
Hmm.
really profound for him about God, about trust, about community, about forgiveness of self, of others, of something about the live performance of being art in motion.
Hmm.
He wept while watching them, and he spent 5 years trying to understand why this went so deep for him.
Okay, so this was you already knew him when he had this encounter in 1991. So
Yeah.
did he ever speak with you about these experiences or the book that he wanted to write?
Well, yeah, I've got to be honest, we didn't take it very seriously at L'Arche. I don't think, or a
Really?
lot of us didn't anyway. It seemed hilarious
Ah,
that Henry's latest obsession was a trapeze.
right. Yes.
And we did, his 60th birthday party, we put up big banners of, trapeze troops and things hanging in the ceiling and all. And we thought it was both really funny and rather frightening to think of him cruising around the back roads of Germany at night with a convoy of trapeze
Right.
artists and caravans. But he was also, as I say, a terrible driver. So people thought this was really comical.
Now, do you know if he actually ever tried any of the trapezing
Yeah.
or are the exercises that they would do?
Oh yeah, it's what a great scene. He climbed up onto the pedestal with they at one of their practices they said, "Okay, Henry, come try this." And Henry, for a guy who was anxious about a lot of things, was also quite fearless about trying things and really getting on the inside of stuff. So he climbed right
Right.
up, and there's actually video of it. And really lousy handheld video, but you can see it on video. And
Wow.
climbs up, they hand him the trapeze. He's got a harness on with ropes. And then Rodley, the head of the Flying Rodleys, Rodley Stevens is his name, literally grabs him around the waist and throws him off the pedestal. And he swings back and forth and he drops into the net. And then you can hear everyone laughing and applauding. And he tries walking in the net and he's just lying there laughing. It's the most beautiful thing. And it also, I found it really moving because there's so much discussion of how dangerous it is to put people on pedestals. And
Yeah. Yeah.
like that. This totally changes my mental image of a pedestal. A
It
pedestal
does.
is not a place to be alone. It's not a place to stay. A pedestal is you climb up with your friends. And if you might get stuck on the pedestal, your friends will pick you up and throw you off.
That's fascinating. Yeah, and the pedestal as a launching pad for trust and complete surrender in a way, I suppose, if you're holding on to a trapeze.
Yeah, yeah, trusting the people around you,
Trusting.
and for humor, for joy. One of the things
Yeah.
saying about the trapeze troupe was how much they smiled at each other and enjoyed each other and the fun they were having.
Hmm. So would you say, I mean, you've already given us so much and a lot of what the story is about, but in a nutshell, is there anything spiritually that we can learn from trapeze artists?
Yeah, yeah, so much, so much. Henry, through this book, he wrestles with all the different levels at which this speaks to him. And I should say about the book that I wanted Henry's words to be
Hmm.
Henry's words. So it's actually in two typefaces.
Okay.
It's framed by me telling the story in my typeface because there wasn't really a full manuscript. It wasn't a book. There were fragments and experiments and bits and pieces. And
Hmm.
I tried to reconstruct something of why he loved them and why he got to where he did. So the book, yeah, is in two typefaces. My voice and Henry's are very distinct.
Hmm.
The most famous thing that he also had written in his other books before his death was his great discovery that the flyer doesn't actually reach out and grab the catcher, that the flyer has to, as they take off with momentum, they stretch out their hands, and the catcher comes and grabs them.
Hmm.
And if the flyer tries to grab the catcher, it could break both their wrists. It would be
Right.
dangerous. That the flyer has to just fly and reach out and trust,
Trust.
and the catcher will grab them. And for him, that was a huge spiritual thing. It talks about
Yes.
the moment of our death. It talks about in our life. It talks about, but also about people, our relationships with each other, that we,
Mm-hmm.
at points, we just have to trust. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the catcher has to let the flyer fall into the net. It's the safest thing sometimes to not try to grab them, to realize this won't go and let them fall and know they'll be safe. There's just so many layers of looking after each other in this. So the kinds of ways that imagery spoke to him about how in the motion of our lives and the momentum of our lives, we look after each other.
Mm-hmm.
That we're not in it alone, that we can't do it alone, that nobody flies alone.
Absolutely. No, this is fascinating, Carolyn. I'm what a privilege for you to have met him and journeyed with him and been his friend, and to be able to help him finish telling that story that he wanted to tell so much. So thank you for sharing it with us, not just through the book, but with us today. It's been great meeting you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. It's a joy. I love talking about Henri. Thank you.
Carolyn Whitney-Brown is an artist, professor, and author. Her latest novel, co-authored with Henri Nouwen, is Flying, Falling, Catching, an unlikely story of finding freedom. It is now on paperback, and it's published by HarperCollins. Here now is Ricky Vazquez with All Is Not Lost from his album of the same name.
For the times you're afraid and feeling alone, on the days that you question all that you know, when you run far away but still long for home, all is not lost. When the dark is so deep it can't be explained, when you're tired of waiting for something to change, but the pain that you carry is finally named. Ooh, all is not lost. Ooh, all is not lost. When your trust has been broken, wondering why, and the truth you believe in feels like a lie, there's no easy answer to make it alright. All is not lost. All is not lost. Life is gonna be hard. We're okay where we are. All is not lost. There is space here to feel, and those feelings are real. All is not lost.
That was Ricky Vazquez with the title track of his new album, All Is Not Lost. You may remember Ricky Vazquez from 2021 when we featured the worship collective Village Lights, which he belongs to, with Ike Ndolo and Sarah Kroger. But Ricky Vazquez is quite the artist in his own right. When he's not leading worship or performing at conferences and events, Ricky can be found writing hymns with Anchor Hymns, a hymn songwriting collective. Ricky has a brand new album released this weekend, All Is Not Lost, and so to tell us all about it, I am now joined by Ricky Vazquez. Ricky, welcome to the Sultan Light Hour. I should say welcome back to the Sultan Light Hour.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's good. And since we spoke with you and Sarah and Ike, I thought, I need to get like Ricky back and Ike back. And so I'm glad that you have a new album. So that's a good excuse to have you on the show.
Yeah, very exciting. My debut by myself. So this will
Okay,
be
okay, good. I was going to ask you about that, but I wanted to go back to kind of like where you came from because you're living in Nashville now, but were you born in the States or were you born in Puerto Rico?
I was born here
Okay.
in the States. Yeah, but I grew up most of my life in Miami, Florida,
Okay,
South
Miami.
Florida,
Yeah.
and I would spend a lot of my summers in Puerto Rico with my
Okay.
grandparents. So I
Okay.
got a little bit of both, but
Okay, good. Entonces
yeah,
podemos hacer la entrevista en español.
un poquito.
Un poquito. Ah, ¿qué pasó? No, that's good. Okay, really? So you're not even singing in Spanish?
I do, yeah. No, I do. I
Okay.
just get shy.
Oh, come on. Let's not be shy about Spanish.
No,
Um,
yeah. I only
s-
talk to my mom in Spanish, so
yeah, when she's angry, she still calls you Ricardo.
yeah, there's
Um,
no English there.
do you sorry, so was it I guess Puerto Rican, both parents Puerto Rican,
Yeah,
you're
both parents.
spending summers with your grandparents, so I presume everybody's Catholic?
Yeah, culturally for sure.
Okay,
Yeah, for the
yeah,
most part.
yeah. Culturally Catholic. So was there some sort of conversion type experience at some point for you?
Yeah, so I went to a Life Teen camp,
Oh
summer
yeah,
camp
of course.
in high
Yeah,
school for a girl.
yeah,
The right reasons,
yeah, of course. Yeah,
And sneakily, while I was there, the Lord found me. So I
yeah,
did, that was like my initial kind of coming back to church
yeah.
after confirmation. And then later on, I actually worked at that summer camp as a missionary, and that was a lot like deepening of my faith, and also kind of started this journey of like leading worship and kind of writing faith-based music. Started when I was a missionary, but
Yeah. And were you already doing your own music? Like where does the music come in? Was it a musical family that you grew up in?
not at all, no.
No. Okay.
I grew up playing piano my whole life
Yeah.
because my sister signed up for lessons and she quit after like a week. But if she signed up, I had to sign up too. And I
Yeah.
guess I just stuck around.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I played music my whole life. And at the time when I became a missionary, I actually was mostly writing like folk kind
Mhm.
of heartbreak singer-songwriter music. That was the place of life I was in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But since I played music and a lot of times they needed someone to lead worship, it kind of just naturally happened that way. And I also was playing at my home parish at the time in
Mhm.
South Florida. And yeah, just kind of as my love of the Lord grew, then my music
Yeah.
kind of transitioned.
Went
And
in
now
that
that I'm married,
direction.
there's not as much heartbreak music.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. Or it's a different kind of.
Yeah, different
A
kind.
baby woke up in the middle of the
Yeah,
night.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a heartbreak right there. Okay, so then now to the first question where we started. So then this is your first, you've recorded music, you've written music before, you've collaborated with other people, but this is your first album, Ricky Vazquez.
Yes, my first full-length album and first worship Christian album
Oh,
as well. Yeah, outside, I mean, the projects I've been a part of, Village Lights and another project, Anchor Hymns, that was
yeah,
all like worship music that I written and recorded. But for like Ricky Vazquez, all my old music was kind of what I was saying, that like folk
yeah,
kind of heartbreak stuff. And for a while, I've wanted to do my own album, but I was gonna do it in 2020, and then a
yeah,
lot
then,
happened.
yeah, exactly.
So it's been a long time coming, but I'm super excited to finally have some of my own music now.
So you wanted to write an album, that you then sit down and actually write an album, or were these songs that you had sort of in the back burner over the years?
Yeah, a little bit of both. There
Yeah,
are songs that were naturally coming out throughout the years, and some of them I kept, and then I was like, all right, well, let's write a couple more and make it
yeah,
a full record.
yeah,
So it's a little bit of both. Some of these songs have been written a long time ago, and some of them were written pretty intentionally for making this album.
yeah.
So
Okay, so I'm always curious about album titles and how artists pick kind of like that title track. And All Is Not Lost. I mean, it's a good title for a
yeah,
song and for an album, but I'm assuming that does that reflect also kind of where you are in your life, or what kind of message you want to give with this album?
yeah, a little bit. That song in particular was pretty special to me. It's funny. I wrote it with two artists I was really excited to write with that I'm like big fan of, but
Yeah.
also wanted them to help me write like something really fun. And then it ended up going a completely different direction. But kind of out of some tragedy in our local community. So the Covenant shooting happened that week here in Nashville.
Yeah.
And we had a mutual friend who worked at that church and knew a lot of the people involved. So it was just like really heavy. So it was like, we cannot write a happy song right now. But what can we write? And that song just kind of came out, and it's a hopeful song, but it's not even like we have all the answers. It's just like, as long like God is with us in this suffering and all is not lost. It's like the bare minimum, like concession. 'Cause there's not really anything you can say to someone in like some tragedy like that dark, you know? But that song kind of just stuck with me and kind of stands alone thematically, but also I just thought that theme fit a lot of the songs, where a lot of the songs are kind of about my own journey. Just like there were times in my life where I was pretty far away from God and I basically thought that all was lost for me.
Yeah.
And a lot of these songs are about that, just kind of journeying from like feeling like hopeless to finding hope in God. And so it kind of ended up being like a central mantra for the album, and fit the theme of a lot of the songs. So that's kind of where I landed on it. But yeah,
it's good to know. And I think most of the people that come on the show, that they're writing music, and no matter what the, you know, maybe sad is not the word, but you know, no matter what the mood is or the tone is, there's always hope. And that's speaks true to our Christian faith, I guess. What are your hopes for your music? Is this music, I mean, I have my own opinion, but is it music that, you know, people can listen to in the car? Is it worship music? It's not, I mean, it's not really liturgical music.
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of both. Like there's definitely a lot of the songs are stuff you can listen to in the car, and just kind of, I wanted to be pretty honest in a lot of it with my own journey, and just kind of meet people where they're at. So it's a bit of a mixture of what I used to do, which was the non-Christian based music, but now with the messaging being Christian. But then there are a couple songs that are a bit more on the worship side as well, that could be used in kind of worship settings, or so it's a little bit of both. Definitely not liturgical, but there are ways to play some of these that it could be a lot used in worship settings for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I can definitely picture myself in the car listening to some of these tracks, especially "Runaway," which we're going to end the show with. Ricky, thank you for sharing a little bit of yourself with us today, and for writing this music. I always end by asking people if they're working on the next album, or have you had it for now? It's like, no, we got a baby. I can't. Or are you always writing? Are you hoping to, or are we putting out singles? Like, what's next for you?
Yeah, I'm always writing, and kind of, as I said, I'm involved in a lot of other projects like Village Lights and some other stuff. So always writing. I just basically finished this album and put it out. So at the moment, there's not another album, but there are other songs that I haven't recorded yet that are already in the vault. So I'm sure they will find their way out somehow. So it might be a single here and there.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm going to let these songs live a little bit.
Yes, exactly. Let's give people a chance to download the album, download the
There you
songs,
go.
and you can get all that music wherever you stream your music. Just look for Ricky Vazquez. Ricky, it's good to see you again. And thanks for coming on the show and telling us, like I said, a little bit about you, and thanks for the music. It's great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I also did want to say, actually, there are a couple songs I wrote completely in Spanish that I was going to fit in this project, but then it felt like it's its own project. So for my Latinos, we have another project potentially.
Seguir esperando. Okay, that's okay. It's good to wait. Wait for the good stuff. All right. Okay, more Latino. Okay, for sure, we'll bring you back on the show and play some Spanish music. Okay, para los Latinos. Anyway, thank you, Ricky, and take care. Love the music, and God bless.
Yeah, thank you.
You can find out more about Ricky Vazquez at his website, rickyvazquezmusic.com, and you can follow him on all your social media and find his music and his new album, All Is Not Lost, streaming everywhere. Here now is Ricky Vazquez with Runaway from his new album, All Is Not Lost.
From my very first breath to the last that I'll breathe, and everyone in between, you have been there for me. From the moment I wake to the moment I sleep, Lord, you wait patiently, you don't tire of me. When I lose my way, when I'm losing faith, you reach out your hand, hold me up again. There's nothing that I'll ever do, there's nothing that I have to prove. When I'm a runaway, you never run away. There's nothing that'll change your mind, no child that you leave behind. When I'm a runaway, you never run away. From the beginning,
We're listening to Ricky Vazquez with Run Away from his album All Is Not Lost. And that concludes this special edition of the Sultanite Hour. Remember to download our new app, SL Plus. That's where you can listen to our program. You can also visit our website, slmedia.org, where you can watch all our programs. That's also where you can find out everything you want to know about Sultan Light Media and how you can support our ministry, because we cannot do this without your financial support. That's slmedia.org. If you have any comments or questions, you can send them to me. You can email me, pedro@slmedia.org, or you can also look for me on your social media. I'm Deacon Pedro, and thank you for being with us today.